and welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. Recently, Organised Labour was able to reach a compromise with the federal government as regards the demands that they have for workers, and also suspended its industrial action for the next 30 days. We also have news stories for you. We will be right back.
Discussion.
It's the second edition of the Energy and Labour Summit, organized by the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASAN. At the event, industry players discussed the future of the oil and gas sector and how workers' welfare can be enhanced.
The labour movement have been steadfast on the positions of what they think could be done before government could go into deregulation. And a lot of these has been stated in the past. Things to put in place, for the short term, the medium term, and for the long term, on what could be done in order to alleviate the sufferings that Nigerians are passing through today. And you could see labor leaders, both in the past and in the now, are all in sync on what could be done.
My brother.
At the panel session, experts stressed the need for workers in the sector to upskill and reskill, while stakeholders must invest in technology.
Let's focus on tailor-made education that will help us protect our pipelines. We don't have to ask any part of the world to help us with pipeline surveillance. Our people in Lagos should be able to give us technology that will protect our pipelines. And to do that, it will not happen spontaneously. Government will have to be intentional by funding efforts, research, tailored to some outcome.
There is no substitute to fuel, even globally. So crude oil will still remain relevant. It will continue to be relevant. But the problem is that to attract, funding, global funding, what we call foreign direct investment, is slow because of climate change and because of the transition. So to handle that, the country must develop in-house capacity to address funding deficits.
The regulation has come to stay. Technologies will be adopted. And so we have to make the steps to begin to train, our workforce to take over roles, because when technology comes, the new roles are created. And so we need to begin to train our workforce to take those new roles that we're transiting into.
As workers continue to prepare for just transition, it was agreed that there should be enhanced transparency in the implementation of policies in the oil and gas sector.
The Association of Senior Staff of Banks, Insurance and Financial Institutions, ASBIFI, has issued a 21-day ultimatum to the management of Heritage Bank over its decision to terminate the employment contracts of more than 30 of its staff members. National President of ASBIFI, Soji Oluwole, explained at the press conference that the 21-day ultimatum issued is expedient to ensure that workers' rights are protected.
The Ministry of Labour had a cry, and from the, I think the directive came from the Minister's office. We were summoned to a meeting today on the matter. However, while we may have stayed action out of respect for the ministry, we have also issued a 21-day ultimatum to Heritage Bank to clear. After a meeting with the ministry, we are going to brief our labor centers to begin to strategize on the next line of action, because we believe that 21 days is enough for Heritage to retrace their steps and to ensure that the right thing is done. We are hopeful when we get there today that something positive will come out of it, and we'll be able to resolve this matter once and for all.
In a statement by the union, it states that though the Ministry of Labour and Employment has heeded the call and intervened, seeking to mediate a resolution, the union expects that the management of Heritage Bank will recall the sacked workers.
After 30 days, if these issues are not implemented, we'll revisit all the issues. Workers at the state level will have organs in those places that use this as a benchmark to go towards the implementation. The sense of suspending a strike. When you suspend a strike, we return back to work. Well, there might be some pockets of hitches, which has to do with information flow and probably logistics. Those ones are manageable, but this information through our organs will go down because everybody is expecting our position as at now, because we went to our organs to take mandate, to take decision here, and then these decisions have been taken. It is something that affects everybody. In some private sector companies, they are taking some measures. I can remember one or two banks that have actually implemented about 100% wage review. So it's not something that, we are saying whether it will affect them or not. It will. And then it's a measure that is aimed at cushioning the effect of this harsh policy. Harsh policy in the sense that it was not anticipated, and it appeared that the fabric, of the source of existence of Nigerians. So that is a stark reality that is facing all of us. So we have to face it.
Organized labor suspended its planned indefinite nationwide strike for 3 months after reaching agreement with the federal government. It's 3 weeks and counting after the agreement, and labor's position has not changed. But the federal government affirmed its commitment to fulfilling its promises to the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) and the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria (TUC). Some of the agreements reached between the federal government and organized labor include granting of additional wage of 35,000 naira to federal workers beginning from September 2023. This will continue till a new national minimum wage is signed into law. Others are inauguration of a new minimum wage committee within 1 month from the date of the agreement, as well as suspension of collection of value-added tax on diesel for 6 months beginning from October 2023. Part of the agreement indicates that the federal government will vote 100 billion naira for the purchase of high-capacity compressed natural gas (CNG) powered buses for mass transit in the country, with provision of initial 55,000 kits to start an auto gas conversion program. The government aims to commence the rollout by November 2023, with pilot stations across 10 university campuses nationwide. The other leg of the agreement is the federal government's plan to implement tax incentives for the private sector and general public. The parties also reached agreement on the leadership crisis rocking the National Union of Road Transport Workers (NURTW) and the purported proscription of the Road Transport Employers Association of Nigeria (RTN), with the federal government committing to handling labor matters in line with relevant ILO conventions and Nigerian Labour Acts. As part of the agreement with Labour, the federal government will increase its initiative on distribution of subsidized fertilizers to farmers across the country. Also, the federal government agreed to encourage state governments through the National Economic Council and the Nigeria Governors Forum to implement new wage for their workers. More so, the federal government commits to providing funds, as announced by the President, for micro, small and medium-scale enterprises, with the beneficiaries expected to commit to the principle of decent jobs. The two parties agreed to form a joint visitation team to the refineries to ascertain their rehabilitation status, while they commit to abide by the dictates of dialogue in future engagements. The federal government has submitted the Memorandum of Understanding to the relevant court of competent jurisdiction as consent judgment. On the Profile Interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the Minister of Labour and Employment. He brings us up to speed on how the Federal Ministry of Labour and the federal government was able to reach a compromise with organized labour. He also reaffirms that the timeline given to organized labour will be respected. Congratulations, sir, on your appointment as the Minister for Labour and Employment.
Thank you.
I know it's not been really easy because there's been a lot of meetings and meetings.
Yes.
So you are trying to assure us now that the 30 days timeline by the Nigerian Labour Congress and TUC is workable for government to meet up with their own bargain of the agreement?
Well, by the grace of God, because what we tried to do too was to get what we have from the Ministry of Finance. That's why the Minister of Finance was always available to tell us. We spoke about the issue of the buses, the CNG buses, and the conversion, and then all the items that were the tools. We asked him, I asked him, first, let me be sure that that the money is there. He said the money is available. I said, the money is available. I said, yes, then we make the commitment. If the money is available, he told them the money is available. They said, no, that's what they do. By the time you make agreement, they come and say the money is not there. He said the money is there. Who are thinking of about 500? Yes. But what is raised right now, 100 billion is available. And so, you see, we are also negotiating on the basis of trust. There was this trust. The money is there. So if you put out 100 billion, how many of those buses? All of them were calculated. And they said, take that one off. The 35,000, the 25,000 was rejected. They wanted 40 or 50. We negotiated and we got to 35. We accepted. We accepted.
For 6 months?
No, I'm talking about
the 35,000.
Well, it's not really about the duration this time, because the issue of duration was argued. But what we are saying is that this will now be the temporary measure before the implementation of the salary, the new salary increase. That is the wage.
New national minimum
wage. So within the time of the setting of the committee, which is one of the part of the agreement, is to set up the committee on the new salary increase. So which will now start immediately. I'm sure right now we're working on it to give Mr. President to make the announcement so that Mr. President will announce the committee to start sitting. So it is already a legislation. It's already law that from now to April there will be new salary. So if you calculate the period from now to April, it means that anything you are doing are temporary measures. By the time you get there is implementation. So we don't want the implementation to again to be prolonged. That's why we're saying we're working with the 6 months. So that as we start the committee will start sitting. We're expecting that before the expiration of that period, they would have reached an agreement. And then implementation will start exactly within that period. So if we calculate, that's why we're always saying 6 months, 6 months. For them, they rejected. Yes, they said, yes, it cannot be 6 months. Let it be that whatever temporary measures we are doing here will continue when we prolong, when the salary increase is not being done within time. That 35,000 will continue. That 35,000 will continue. But for us, we are thinking that, yes, let us work quickly. We are going to work quickly, so that when we get it done, there will be no need for 35. All we will be talking about is the salary increment, and which will involve that 35 plus other things that are going to be negotiated. So we give and take so many of them, and you know, my role was double. First, I was leading the government side, but I was also sitting as a conciliator. That is what the role that is given to Minister of Labour. You sit as a conciliator. As a conciliator, at a point you must shift from federal government to Labour. Where you see they are making a justifiable agreement, you move to them. So I was moving from them. Sometimes I move to Labour, and I come back. Labour will harass me, will come back to me again and said, you are abandoning us. You are the one that is the problem. You will be the problem. And then I shift back to, sometimes I also move from federal government side to Labour to support them. And my colleagues will look at it and say, look at you, you are supposed to lead us, but you are already giving out to Labour. My role is not to lead you alone. My role is to see an arbiter, to mediate. So whatever it is, is guided by the ILO, the labor law, International Labor Conventions. So let me not be seen taking side, but I represent federal government, because whatever is done today is because I'm a minister of Labor and Employment. So that was how we saw ourselves, with that kind of understanding. But it wasn't really a negotiation that was that brought in physical exchange or nothing. Yes, it was hot, but with very, very cogent reasons on both sides, explaining and also understanding.
Very brilliant negotiation, as you've described.
Yes.
And I think the federal government workers would definitely be much happier.
Yeah.
But that brings us back to state and local government workers.
Yes.
As the arrowhead of this conversation, what would be your recommendation to state government to ensure that workers at the state level and at the local government level earn decent wage?
Yes, we did that. In part of the agreement, there was also an item for that, which we made a pronouncement that we urge the local government, the states and private sectors to also know that this is increment that will stand in temporary standing as a temporary remedy for palliatives, if you call it that way, for the implementation of the withdrawal of the minimum wage, of the subsidy. And subsidy affects everybody. Not think that, yeah, this is all about federal government. It's also going to affect your workers. They are going to go to the same market. They are going to ply the same transport. Whatever is affecting these people is affecting you. So it's like a signal. Let everybody sit alert and begin to prepare to implement the same thing. So we made in one of the items to appeal to the state to start.
Are you appealing or recommending?
Yeah, because no, because we don't have a right to them. They have we're running a federal system. We're a federal system, and so they have a decision to make. Even when it comes to salary increment, at the end of the day, minimum wage, it is joint meeting, because whatever you decide, you are going to take a decision with all of them.
So have you been able to engage with probably the Nigerian Governors Forum or group of bodies of governors to probably engage them more to see what they can do, or to encourage them to do the needful?
Well, that is what we made in our suggestion. We said we will not be waiting for people to go on strike before we start meeting. Immediately after that engagement, immediately after that communique, we are already engaging the labor, continuous engagement, both the labor and the state governors, and even the local governments, to analyze, to also tell them why it should be this way, or why it should be this way. It's going to be hard on government. It's not easy for government to talk about trillions now, but we're telling them that you must gear up towards this. It has never happened before. You wake up, you withdraw subsidy, even before negotiation. But this time, the subsidy has been withdrawn. So the negotiation must go on. So we're engaging them. We're all engaging them. Because recently, palliatives were given to the states. They said they gave them already, I think, 5 billion or so each to each state. That itself was already generating this anxiety of increase in the state, because they are already beginning to say, oh, so much money is coming to states.
Yeah. So they should share more.
They should share more. They should add. When they had this, I am sure in all the states now, all the unions are also meeting to say that the same implementation will come here to the state. It's not going to be easy, but I know that with a lot of dialogue, people will understand, and they must pay.
We all agree that inflation has quadrupled lately, and would like to know what the federal government is doing in terms of intervention into specific sector, especially the agricultural sector.
I think that is done comprehensively. If you hear what the Minister of Finance said, if you also look at what the President has done, he has set up an economic team ably, I think led by the Ayodele, also a very good team that is going to be working towards addressing some of these issues. We know that, yes, sometimes we'll be talking about the exchange rates. Sometimes we'll also be talking about inflation when there's huge sum of money in circulation. So without, you must set up a committee to also be advising on this. There's already a set up committee inaugurated by Mr. President, and the finance also have a lot of measures towards addressing inflation. So whatever we're doing is also doing with advice and recognizing that it may also lead to inflation. So all those things are taken into consideration.
Nigeria sits as the chairman governing board of the International Labour Organization.
Yes.
What engagement have you been able to make with our representatives there? And looking at how probably that position can be profitable to Nigerians and Africans at large.
It is going to be profitable because whatever you are doing, you need a lot of collaboration with the ILO, because ILO is a world body that is set up to oversee transactions, to oversee control of activities for workers all over the world. Where you see infringing on rights of workers, that is the body. Fortunately, we are now at the chair of the governing board. We are preparing for the ILO, which is coming up at the end of this month. And I'm very happy too that I'm the minister. I'm the one that is going to lead the delegation. And with kind of measures that have been done in this country, especially cooperation of Mr. President, we are hoping that we are going to be leading the African nations too. Well, first, our concentration will also be with our fellow African nations. I just had a visit of the country director and their directors to inform us of some of the things that they are doing and what we are expecting to go and do, and to argue for some kind of a convention that we are also going to support or not to support or not to support. So without that, we are already at the leadership in Africa to lead the African nations to the ILO. There are a lot of benefits from ILO. Like you see in a lot of our training, if you are talking of child labor, you are talking of decent jobs, you are talking of employment, you are talking of skills for the younger generation. All those support will be supplemented by the ILO. They provide the training. They provide the capacity training. And so all those things you need from them. It is only when you also follow the regulations, because we are signatories to the convention. So we must keep to the regulations.
Finally, before I let you go, unemployment and underemployment seems to be one big issue that Nigerians are faced with. Is there any blueprint or any plans in place to ensure that we have more young people gainfully employed, or maybe if they have their own businesses, what level of support can they get to ensure that they are also able to contribute their own quota to nation building?
That is one aspect that I will always respect Mr. President. Even during the campaigns, what Mr. President will always say is that my emphasis is on employment. My emphasis is also on providing skills for the younger ones, for the younger generation. My emphasis is taking people off the street. Now, when you do that, you have taken Nigeria out of her problems. In the 8-point agenda, again, you see a lot of emphasis on skill acquisition, on the gainful employment, and even in the cabinet now, you can see the way they are bringing a lot of youth, bringing a lot of youth. That is the target. And I think about 5 million to 10 million, creating 10 million jobs. In the Ministry of Labor and Employment, it's a tax on us. It's a tax given to us. And we are also liaising with other MDAs to realize this target, because we must prepare and focus on creating jobs that will take many people off the street. Once you take people off the street, you are avoiding insecurity, you are avoiding crisis, you are avoiding strike, you are avoiding restiveness, and that country will move in peace. And while you do that, it will also help you to focus on your development plans.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. You are very welcome.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.